Hi there, students. Obscure, an adjective. Obscurity, the noun, an uncountable noun. Obscurely, the adverb. Okay, obscure. If something is obscure, it's not known to many people. It's hidden away in a corner. So, an obscure 14th century Welsh poet, an obscure island off the North Hebrides. So, something that's not known to many people. Obscure, something that's not clear, something that's difficult to understand. The explanation that he gave was obscure and confusing. I don't understand why they do this. I think the reasons why they do this are obscure. They're not clear. They're not easy to understand. An obscure explanation is very frustrating for students. To obscure as a verb, to prevent something from being seen. Now my hand is obscuring your view of my beautiful face. The sun was obscured by the clouds. They put up a billboard which obscured the view. To obscure, to make something difficult to understand, to make something difficult to discover. So, I tried to obscure what had really happened from my boss. The suspect tried to obscure the facts from the police. So obscure, not known to many people. An obscure 18th century composer. Obscure, difficult to understand, unclear. The reasons for this are very obscure. Okay, so obscure, something that doesn't have enough light, it's dark. The obscure depths of night. As the sun went down, the room became more and more obscure. To fall into obscurity, to be forgotten. So he's a really good painter, but he has fallen into obscurity. Far from the centre of human population. This is an obscure village on the boundary, on the borders of the country. Somewhere out of sight, an obscure place to hide away, an obscure poet, undistinguished, not well known. Okay, William Blake, sometimes his style is obscure and difficult to understand. It's vague, it's not clearly understood. To obscure, to make dim. The painting was obscured by shadows. Something that's to obscure, to make difficult to learn. I think the difference between British spelling and British pronunciation makes English a more obscure language. It's more these difficulties obscure understanding. Okay, so to overshadow, to cast a shadow over, to obscure. So obscure, dark, faint. This picture is very obscure and it's difficult to see everything in it. It needs cleaning. Obscure, hidden out of sight, inconspicuous. Obscure, difficult to understand. Obscure references. So dingy, dark, or obscure, ill-defined. Obscure, out of sight, hidden. Obscure, difficult to understand, obscure, not well known, enigmatic, esoteric, difficult to know, a little bit arcane, if you like. Wow, obscure. So undiscovered, not known about. The origins of this are obscure and not well known. He made obscure references to people that I don't know, not clearly expressed, not easily understood. To obscure, to keep something from being seen. Obscure, hard to define. Obscure, dim and dark. The obscure light of the moon. The grey clouds obscured the sun. Okay, so obscure. I don't wish to obscure the issue and make it more difficult to understand. Okay, obscurity, the darkness. He's too good a player to disappear into obscurity. The obscurity of his logic left me confused. He stopped playing concerts and releasing records, and he fell into obscurity. The meaning of this is very obscure. Obscure, the obscure dark of a room that's shut in. The obscure shade of the jungle, shrouded in darkness. Not clearly seen, not easily distinguished. Something that's faint. It had obscure markings on the body. He was using obscure jargon, not readily understood, mysterious. Okay, he's not a famous poet, he's not prominent, he's an obscure poet. To obscure, to make dim, to make dark. The dirt on the windows obscured the view. To conceal, to hide. So there was snow on the cracks of the glacier, obscuring crevasses. So obscurity, to fall into obscurity, not to be known anymore. To obscure a view, to an obscure reason, obscure reference, an obscure song. Okay, so obscure, it's known by a very few people. The origin of this is very obscure. Obscure is difficult to understand, difficult to deal with, difficult to know about, because it comes from, it's written in a very obscure language. This fell into obscurity, the state of being almost unknown, known by very few people. So he was plucked from obscurity. Obscure, it's got lots of meanings. He always speaks in obscure legal jargon. The origin of this word remains obscure. The origins of this tradition are obscure. He spent most of his life working in obscurity. She rose from obscurity to stardom. He died in obscurity and nobody knew him. Okay, so obscure. This comes from obscure in French, obscurus in Latin, meaning dark. Obscure. So, and then formality, obscure. 5 informality, use anywhere. Obscurity, maybe 6 informality, but use anywhere slightly on the formal side. So obscure, obscurity. Bye for now.